Welcome back to the Word Podcast. I'm Julian Spivey, the creator, editor, and writer for The Word. Check out our reviews, articles, and lists at thewordwebzine.weebly.com. We have a bunch of best of the decade lists starting to publish now for y'all to check out, so be sure. It's a lot of fun to check those out. I'm joined today by a couple of people I've enjoyed having on this podcast in the past. My wife, Aprille Hanson-Spivey, and my friend, Alea Jeremiah. How are y'all doing today?
Good. Really good. Excited to talk about Christmas movies.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's that time of year again. The bells are ringing, the lights are up on houses and trees, and cats are batting ornaments all around the house. Soon we'll be hearing Santa's reindeer landing on our rooftops. So, Alea, Aprille, we're going to discuss our favorite Christmas movies. The ones we most like to curl up on our couches with a glass of cocoa and our dogs and watch on an annual or at least a frequent basis. I think we've each chosen two today that are our favorites, and we may talk about a few other things at the end of the show. But, Alea, you're our guest in our home, so why don't you start with your favorite or one of your two favorite Christmas movies?
One of mine that I watch at least 3 or 4 times every Christmas season is Christmas with the Cranks, starring Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis. Mm-hmm. It's so funny. It's about how their daughter's going off to the Peace Corps and they're canceling Christmas because they're going on a cruise, so they're like boycotting the entire thing, and it's just the frenzy of the neighborhood being like, why are you canceling Christmas? That's unheard of, and it's just hilarious.
I must admit, I have never seen Christmas with the Cranks.
I haven't either.
I know. It's so funny.
What are some things about the movie that just make it one of your favorites? It's kind of like a... Oh, it would help if I'd seen it, but isn't it kind of like Christmas with the family is just a crazy thing, and we're gonna, kind of screw things up because you're not here this year for the tradition?
Kind of, and just all the drama that goes on with their neighborhood is like one of those that every single house decorates for Christmas, and so they're like really offended that they're skipping and everything, and just the chemistry between Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis is amazing. They were so good in that movie together. The banter between them, they were just awesome.
I know that it's not your favorite Christmas movie of all time, but you do have a movie on your list that has something in common with the Christmas and the Cranks, and that is Tim Allen. So, Aprille, what do you have to say about 1994's The Santa Claus?
So, The Santa Claus, I actually do love that movie. It's not one that I watch every year, but I do enjoy it when I catch it. So basically, and I didn't know this, it was actually Tim Allen's first lead role in a movie. Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
And
yes, it was.
I did not know that. Huh. So that was kind of interesting. So I love the story because it's kind of a unique premise. So when Scott Calvin, who is Tim Allen, spots Santa on his roof, he calls out to him, which startles him and causes him to fall off the roof and die, which is not exactly a very Christmassy moment to have Santa killed. But basically, Scott quickly learns that because he was involved in Santa's death, he is now going to become the next Santa. So it kind of, he starts to grow white hair and gain weight and all this stuff. So, I mean, it's just kind of fun to have Tim Allen just, really play up the comedic aspects of the movie. But I really like it because it's kind of, the beauty of having like a childlike belief in Santa, because it kind of begins with him trying to convince his son that Santa is real. So it's kind of neat to just have him become that. And another thing that was kind of interesting, just a little neat tidbit about that, the first week in November in 1994, he actually, Tim Allen had the number one. But I beat you to it.
Yes, you did. It's one of my favorite tidbits of pop culture history.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna share it instead. So he had the number one movie, which was obviously The Santa Claus. He had the number one rated TV show with Home Improvement, and the number one New York Times book, Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man.
He was the first to ever have a number one movie, TV show, and book at the same time, and nobody's ever done it since.
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know no one's ever done it since.
A lot of people just don't realize that how big Tim Allen was, and like you said, it was his first starring role. It became 1 year before Buzz Lightyear and Toy Story, which has now done 4 films. And I know The Santa Claus had some sequels. They weren't quite as memorable or as good as the original.
I've seen at least the second one, but I can't really. I think it had something to do with Jack Frost, but I can't remember. The first one was
Martin
iconic.
Short teamed up with some of these and with some other movies. They're good buds. I'm going to go back 75 years or so for my first one. Christmas isn't always a cheery time for everybody, and It's a Wonderful Life really gets this aspect of the holiday. It's very likely the heaviest take on Christmas that any movie takes on. And one could argue, actually, it's not so much a Christmas movie, but one that's set during Christmas time, kind of like Die Hard. People say it's a Christmas movie because of when it's set. I don't really agree, but the reason why I do consider It's a Wonderful Life to be a Christmas movie, other than the fact that it's shown on television around Thanksgiving and Christmas every year, is that this is essentially a take on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It stars James Stewart as George Bailey, a man who's given up on his dreams because he's busy helping his loved ones with theirs. And he has kind of had it enough, and he's going to take his life on Christmas Eve until an angel played by Henry Travers intervenes and shows him what life would have been like without him. This is where the angel is a stand-in for the ghosts of Christmas past and future from the Dickens tale. It's a Wonderful Life was actually Stewart's first role in the film in 5 years. He had been serving his country as a pilot in World War II. He was Hollywood's most decorated actor in service in the war. And this movie teamed him with Frank Capra, who had directed him to perhaps his greatest all-time film performance in 1939's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. This role saw Stewart, who is my all-time favorite actor, in a darker performance than we'd seen him in before. Is something that he would continue on in his career. It was nominated for Best Picture. It lost to The Best Years of Our Lives, and Stewart was nominated for Best Actor. He also lost to Frederick March from The Best Years of Our Lives. But surprisingly, It's a Wonderful Life was not a hit upon its release. It took many years for it to become a release, and really, its repeated television reruns is kind of what made it into a huge hit. And over time, it's developed into one of Hollywood's most beloved films, and it was actually ranked in 2007 as the 20th greatest American film ever made by the American Film Institute. Aprille, I know you've seen it. Have you seen It's a Wonderful Life? Do y'all have anything y'all want to add about this great movie?
It's just so, like, I know it's kind of dark, but, like, you know, when you get towards the end, it's just so heartwarming. Like, the bell ringing and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just a good family, like, feel-good movie.
Well, and I love James Stewart completely, and it was interesting because I caught the part of the movie on a few nights ago, and it just, you had to leave it on. You have to watch it. It's just, I don't know, it's just very hopeful for something that starts out so sad.
Yeah. One thing that I find people say as a negative about this movie is, like, it's so long, and I think it's barely over 2 hours. It's kind of an average film, but I think people remember watching it on television with commercials where it's stretched out to 3 hours. So they're just like, I can't watch it. It's so long. Well, actually, if you find a DVD, I prefer watching the black and white version, not the colorized version. That's always a bad thing to do to film. But yeah, if you grab the DVD, it's only about 2 hours long. It's not that long.
It's kind of like a Mary Poppins. That's what people say about that. Like, they think it's so long, and I'm like, it's not really.
Or how The Sound of Music's always turned into a 4-hour event by... It is long, but it's not quite 4 hours. But we're going to break the order a little bit because I mentioned that It's a Wonderful Life is basically a modern, or for 1946, a modern take on A Christmas Carol. And I know Aprille's favorite Christmas movie of all time is also a take on the Charles Dickens classic. So what do you have to say about your next film?
Okay, so The Muppet Christmas Carol, which came out in 1992, is one of my all-time favorite movies. I have to watch it every Christmas, and it stars Michael Caine as Scrooge. But really, I kind of view the stars as, Gonzo and Rizzo, Rizzo the Rat, because they narrate the movie. So it's basically the cast of the Muppets. So you have Kermit the Frog as Bob Cratchit, and Miss Piggy as Emily Cratchit. And so it's this classic tale, of course, where, Scrooge is visited by the three spirits, the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. And they're all meant to set him on a new path in life. So I have to watch it every year, not only for the funny moments, but the music is fantastic. And honestly, ever since I knew we were going to do this podcast, I've had, It Feels Like Christmas from the movie stuck in my head. It's like that last song, and it's so catchy. And just kind of, since I've mentioned it with the other one, since we're throwing out little bits of trivia, so anyone that's watched the movie, they have this song called When Love Is Gone, and it's sung by Scrooge's long-lost love, Belle, and that was actually removed from the movie release. Basically, and despite objections from the producer and director Brian Henson when it was released in theaters, because Disney chairman at the time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Katzenberg thought it was too sad for children.
Oh.
And so it was kept in the VHS version, which was funny because I've actually seen it on VHS. Yeah. And I watched it recently with the DVD, version, and it's not in Blu-ray or TV or Netflix. It's cut out. And it's very awkward cut. So it's just kind of like they have, Scrooge reacting after the song is done, but it's, nobody understands why he has this weird reaction. Huh. So it's kind of an odd thing. And I will admit, like, as a child, that was a long song to get through, and it was kind of like, but it's awkward, watching it as an adult. It's really better to have it in there. And also, just another trivia, that was the first major Muppet project after Jim Henson's death. And Michael Caine also told the director he planned on playing his characters as if he were working with the Royal Shakespeare Company and not Muppets.
I don't think he does. I really think he does.
He does. And that's what makes it so perfect.
Unique thing. It's a Christmas Carol, such a serious story. And Michael Caine, such a serious British Shakespearean actor. And he plays it like this, but you have puppets.
Muppets.
Muppets and puppets. And he's just playing off of Kermit the Frog like it's Dustin Hoffman. Have you seen Muppet Christmas Carol?
I saw it when I was younger, like a little kid, but I don't really remember too much of it. I need to rewatch it for
You've
sure.
You've got to. It's so good.
I'm
sure it's on Disney Plus.
I'm sure Aprille will force me to watch it again this year. It's a good movie. It's a very good movie. I don't need to see it every year.
Oh, you do.
I don't even need to see It's a Wonderful Life, my favorite Christmas movie every year. That's just who I am. Alea, you have, I believe, the most recent film that we'll be talking about today on your list, so take it away.
So this one is my all-time favorite Christmas movie, trumps everything else, and it's a movie that's either you love it a lot or you absolutely can't stand it. There's really no in between, and that's Elf. And a lot of people dislike it because they're like, Will Ferrell's just way too much in it. They think he's annoying and all that.
But shouldn't an elf...
That's what, that's how I feel.
Isn't it a perfect performance?
It's just people that get annoyed by Will Ferrell. But I, on the other hand, love it. I think it's so funny. And if anyone ever watches it with me, you'll probably get annoyed because I basically know the whole script and I say their lines before they do. But it's just awesome. It's about Buddy the elf. He is an orphan and he crawls into Santa's bag one night when Santa's delivering toys, and he makes his way to the North Pole, and then the elves raise him. And then he finds out that he was adopted. It's a big traumatic thing for him. And so he goes to find his dad, who's in New York City, and he's on the naughty list. So it's about the adventure of him finding his dad, seeing why he's on the naughty list and all that kind of stuff.
Ed Asner does a great job as Santa Claus in the movie. And Will Ferrell's Buddy is a lot, but like I said, that's how it should that's how it should be for this role. I don't understand people get annoyed by it, but that's what makes James Caan's performance as his father so great, because he's so serious and just a straightforward, stern guy, and he's got to put up with this.
He plays it so well too.
Person. He thinks he's a crazy person.
You can look at his face and you can just see the annoyance in his face. It's just amazing.
And Zooey Deschanel is so adorable.
Zooey Deschanel.
It's I believe the first film where Mary Steenburgen plays Will Ferrell's mother. Is that correct? I can't remember, because she was also his mother in Step Brothers with John C. Reilly. If anybody ever asks me about a Christmas film they should watch, the one that I always go to is one called Remember the Night. I don't believe most people have ever heard of it. Maybe because it's from 1940, but it's just an awesome film, directed by Mitchell Leeson and written by Preston Sturgis, who would soon after this one become a hit director and screenwriter. It stars Fred MacMurray and Barbara Stanwyck 4 years before their devilishly good performances in Billy Wilder's 1944 film noir classic Double Indemnity, which I had seen prior to Remember the Night via Turner Classic Movies. The chemistry between McMurray and Stanwyck in Double Indemnity made me want to watch the two again in Remember the Night, which is definitely a much more heartwarming film than Double Indemnity. Stanwyck is one of my all-time favorite actresses and one who today seems very much underrated. She plays Lee Leander, who's arrested for stealing a bracelet from a jewelry store before Christmas, and Fred MacMurray plays the assistant district attorney Jack Sargent, who's tasked with prosecuting her. And because of the holiday, the trial gets postponed, and Leander is set to spend Christmas in jail. Sargent feels bad for her, gets her bond so she won't have to be behind bars for the holiday. And then it turns out, of course, because it's a heartwarming movie, that both are from the state of Indiana, and they travel home together, and of course a love story develops. It's such a sweet movie, which is great for the holidays, and the chemistry between McMurray and Stanwyck, as this was their first film together, just makes for one of my all-time favorite movie duos. Aprille, I know you've seen this with me. Do you have anything you want to add about Remember the Night?
Well, it's just, it's the chemistry, again, between the leads.
It's just one of the all-time greats, these two together. And they only did like three or four films together, but they're just brilliant together.
Yeah. And it's worth watching.
That pretty much wraps up our. We chose 2 movies each, but I did want to ask some things because when Aprille was developing her list, she kept coming up with television specials, and I said, "No, we're going to do feature films." And she's like, "But what about this one?" I'm like, "No, that was also a special or a short." So, do you want to talk about A Charlie Brown Christmas, which I know is your absolute favorite?
Yes. And I do want to throw in another one too after that. But I will say that Charlie Brown Christmas is, without a doubt, my favorite. And really, honestly, there's so many good TV specials. If you look back at all the, claymation stuff, like the Year Without a Santa Claus, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, all that stuff. I grew up on that. Loved it. So the television special, obviously it aired in 1965 and centered around Charlie Brown being fed up with the commercialism of Christmas and, trying to find the true meaning. And what's really cool for me is, when Linus reveals this by, citing the scripture verse from Luke, which is about the angels announcing the birth of Jesus to the shepherds. And that was something that really freaked out CBS executives at the time. And really just kind of the creators, not Charles Schultz, but the other, workers with movies, they were very freaked out that they had a complete and utter flop on their hands. So, and it was...
It's still shown every year to this day.
It's still shown every year. And so it was really revolutionary it's actually the second longest running Christmas special on television behind Rudolph. But it was really revolutionary at the time because it didn't include a laugh track. And also they had real kids voicing the characters, and they had the jazz score to it, and then of course the biblical reference. So all of this made CBS execs super nervous. But obviously it's iconic. You can't, obviously you can go to any store and still find Christmas decorations associated with, a Charlie Brown Christmas. I've got 2 of the little sad Charlie Brown Christmas trees. And it's such a perfect, cute movie.
And you also wanted to talk about one that I don't recall ever saying. It was called The Small One.
Yes. So The Small One, and that's probably one that just a lot of people have not heard of. And that was actually 1978. And I could be a little bit off on this, but basically it was kind of an extra to Pinocchio. And I'm not sure if it was released in theaters exactly, but it was some sort of in relation to that. So basically it's about a young Judean boy who tries to sell his beloved donkey. And he can't find, they need the money. He can't find somebody to take it. And the only one in town willing to take it would be a tanner. And so toward the end of the movie, the small one, the little donkey, is willing to sacrifice himself and basically give his life for this little boy and actually go back to the tanner. It's very dark.
That's
but
way too dark for a Christmas animated
but
Christmas special.
But here's why, and I'll explain why it's dark. But at any rate, what happens, a miracle does happen, and Joseph and Mary do purchase the donkey. So it turns out to be the donkey that, is...
So it ties in.
For a second there, it's darker than George Bailey trying to jump off a bridge.
But the reason why it's dark is because it was directed and produced by Don Bluth. And this makes a whole lot of sense, and probably why I love it so much, because he directed All Dogs Go to Heaven, The Land Before Time, American Tail. So those are very dark movies, but they're just also very iconic movies. So he just has this dark sense. But honestly, if you've never seen that movie, try to seek it out. It's really, really powerful. So
one thing I wanted to discuss before we left is, do y'all have because we've talked about our favorites, do y'all have a Christmas classic that you just don't like or don't understand the hubbub surrounding it?
I'll let you take that one first.
I actually do have one, but it's not that I don't like it because I do love watching it. I just don't understand the hype around it, and that is White Christmas.
Okay, yeah. The Bing Crosby classic?
Yes. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love watching it. But it doesn't make sense to me because it's White Christmas. It's a Christmas classic. But Christmas is only mentioned in the very, very last scene. Like, that's when they sing that song, is the very last scene. The whole movie is just about them going to, his old army buddies' bed and breakfast and helping him and putting on the show and stuff. It's just not like they just don't mention Christmas until the end. So I'm like, I don't understand why people have to watch it why it's a holiday movie for people every year.
The one that comes to mind, and people listening may just shut off the podcast at this point, is
it's probably already shut off for watching.
is a Christmas Story, which the Turner channels, TBS and TNT, play 24 hours a day on a loop around Christmas. And I've seen it one time. I do not get why everybody thinks this is one of the all-time great Christmas movies. I guess it's fine, but
it's not as good as
it's
others.
not that great.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. Aprille, do you have one?
Yes, which I can't. Okay, if they haven't shut it off for those two, they're definitely going to be pissed now because it's not that I dislike this movie and I really need to watch it again as an adult, but Home Alone.
Okay.
And here's the deal: it's probably a great movie. I have no doubt about that. However,
you just have a bad story surrounding it.
I have a bad story surrounding it. So when I was a child, I went to the movie, and watched it, and all these kids were, just busting out laughing at the slapstick humor. And I was super sensitive when I was little. And so I was literally, crying, wondering why he was being so mean and why these, horrible robbers were being, hurt. Which, realistically, he was defending himself.
Yeah.
So, it's actually... But I don't know why. That just totally went over my head, and I was just, bawling and horrified that they were hurting people. So I need to watch it again because that's just a me thing. But that's one of those that I need to actually probably revisit. But yeah.
All right. I want to thank Leah Jeremiah and Aprille Hanson-Spivey for joining me today on the Word Podcast. You can subscribe and like us anywhere pretty much you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, other places. We record it through Anchor. You can find us there as well. Also, once again, visit us at thewordwebzine.weebly.com, and you can find us on social media at Facebook and Twitter. So thank you guys for joining me.